Welcome to Resource Review from here at the Science Museum in London. In this programme we'll help you choose resources that will make a real difference to your teaching. And today the resources we'll be looking at will cover primary PSHE and citizenship. The resources we'll be looking at are Your World, My World photo pack by Oxfam and Large Puppet by the Puppet Company. Both of these resources deal with the concepts of friendship and relationships amongst young children. And later, with the help of our panel, we'll be reviewing how effective these resources are within the primary PSHE citizenship curriculum. But first, let's see them in action. We visited Edward Wilson Primary School in Westminster, London, where Sarah Shaw is teaching her Year 5 class about the different lives of young children around the world. The first resource she is using is Oxfam Photo Pack, Your World, My World. The set includes A4 photographs, a poster and a teacher's booklet. Let's take a look at it in the classroom.
And our lesson objective today is to find out about children from different parts of the world. My name's Sarah Shaw and I'm a Year 5 teacher. We were looking at sort of geography today but with a specific citizenship focus, thinking about different aspects of people's lives around the world, how different people fit in with different procedures that happen around the world. Kinestap is 9 and MECDs is 2. The Your World, My World is very good, but I think this is probably aimed more at sort of years 2, 3 and 4. There's a lot of sort of simplified texts in here and the lessons are really nice ideas for those sorts of children. In terms of PSHE, it allows you to think about the lives of 4 different children, gives you lots and lots of photographs, and it gives you lots of scenarios and lots of stories about them, and really interesting ideas about how to find out more about them, more about their lives. And we're going to look closely at this photograph later to see if we can work out which country this is in. One potential problem, I think, with the Your World, My World pack is that you study one child from each country. And I think children have a tendency to see that as an experience of all children from that country. So when we had to look at Sasha, I think it was, a lot of children might go away thinking that his experience was that of all Russians. And the same with the other children. But I think this would actually be quite useful if it could come with a contrasting opinion as well of another child from the same country. So if we had 2 children from Ethiopia whose lives were quite different, and 2 children from Russia whose lives were quite different, then I think that would make it a lot more interesting. I think for teachers who are very confident with PSHE or teachers who aren't, this is really very useful. The photographs are great. There's a lot in the photographs and it really shows children how to read a photograph. You know, they're not just the basic pictures all the way through. You've got photographs of children in all sorts of scenarios, having arguments with their parents, going to school with friends, that sort of thing. And I think it's just so easy because the discussion just comes so naturally and the children go with it.
We've just seen how photographs can stimulate interest and promote discussions amongst young children. And to talk about this, we have our resource review panel. So with me today we have Beatrice Nicholson, who's our PSHE consultant. We have Adrienne Jones, who's our freelance education consultant. And we have Alan Mills, head of the affiliation network for the Specialist Schools Trust. Thanks for joining us. If I could come to you first, Beatrice, any general thoughts on this particular resource?
Yeah, I think it's a very good resource. I think the pictures are excellent. They give variety of different children from all over the world. And what I really like about this resource is the fact that it emphasises how the child is as well. So there's quite a lot of games and exercises where the child's encouraged to speak about their feelings.
But talking about feelings is actually quite a deep thing, if you like. Is there sufficient detail in the text to convey true feelings?
Yeah, there's some good exercises which are very interactive. For example, there's one where they say, when I'm happy, this is what I do. When I'm sad, this is what I do. So they're very interactive and simple. So I think they are quite useful for children to encourage them to be emotionally literate.
Okay. Adrienne, what's your reaction to the book?
Well, the good thing about it is that it supports global awareness and citizenship. The amount of detail that Oxfam have gone into for the teacher on how to use it, how to develop activities, how to get children to talk and understand is great. I think the downside is the flimsiness of the photographs. unless they are laminated or there's some kind of protection for them, I can't really see them lasting that long.
Alan, any other comments you'd like to make?
I agree with Adrienne. I think the problem with all those sort of resources is they're so flimsy. You send them out in the way you want children to use them, which is practically, exchanging them, pushing them about, pulling them about. It's going to fall apart. So they need to be laminated, so there's extra costs there. But again, it was a great stimulus for that teacher, and I think she used it really, really well.
Coming back to you, Beatrice, do you think that 4 countries is about the right number to focus on? Have they got that aspect right?
I think they could probably expand that out a bit more. Depends how long they've got to actually focus on this particular pack. But I'd be inclined to give them more countries to focus on, just so they get more awareness of different people and how they live in the world.
Thanks, Beatrice. Now to look at the second resource, let's return to Edward Wilson Primary School. This time Sarah uses 2 large puppets. These puppets have working mouths and arms. Sarah tells a story about friendship to the class and uses puppets as the characters of the story. So let's see how Sarah and her pupils got on with those puppets.
Bring her out very carefully. Okay. We used these empathy puppets today, thinking about friendship. They've been friends for a long time. Now we use them as people, really, to tell a story about something that's happened to them. A story that's a problem. This little girl not being invited to a party when she'd been friends with the boy for such a long time. And we got the children to really relate to these puppets, to think about how they'd be feeling, what they should do, what's going on. What's happened in this situation? What happened to them? Gertrude?
It's like they're not friends anymore, and Robert's not caring about Rosie anymore.
Do you think that's happened? Do you think? But he's got his envelope, hasn't he?
He's got all his attention on the card.
Okay, so he's forgotten about Rosie.
Yeah.
Came over quite fast. Planning a lesson based around these puppets was not a problem at all. It just basically worked around the story, and the sort of activity that we followed the story up with just seemed like quite a natural thing to do. So that wasn't an issue at all. One possible disadvantage might just be the way they look in their expressions. Perhaps they need to be able to have expressions that can change more easily. I think, what did you say to Rosie? In terms of school budget, the puppets are actually quite expensive. And I think they would have to be something that were bought if the school had a real intention of using them, where lots of different year groups were using them and sharing them. What else did they play on? Swings. On the swings. And then it was registration. In terms specifically of PSHE, I think that the puppets are brilliant, because I think they gave the children a real insight into a situation, and it really got them thinking and projecting how they would feel onto these puppets, and really thinking about their own role as a friend and how to be a good friend. And I want you now to spend some time thinking about how Rosie would feel. Okay, I just want you to turn somebody on the carpet. How would Rosie feel in that situation? Or how do you think she'd feel?
So Beatrice, what do you think of the large puppets, and how valuable a resource do you think they'll be for teaching PSHE citizenship?
I think the puppets are a very valuable resource. They tell a story of one of the puppets being excluded, and this is a very painful thing for any child to have to go through, and it will help the child to identify feelings without having to own them themselves, but to place them on the puppet. And this would generate class discussion around the subject, which I think can only be a good thing, because the worst thing is for one child to feel excluded and to be very isolated with that.
Do you think that these resources are effective at getting students to talk about those feelings then?
I think they are. I think it presents a little story. It's very intriguing to see the puppets and how they move, and the children obviously are enchanted by the puppets. So immediately it grabs their attention, so they're interested, and then they can relate to the feelings that the puppets are demonstrating, and it just it opens up the subject in a very safe sort of way.
Adrienne, isn't it a bit stereotypical to have an image of a black puppet with dreadlocks? I mean, is that a bit passé, or is it appropriate to have that type of image now?
Well, the puppets are representing a range of characters. So in that sense, each of the characters, you could say, are a stereotype, which they are. But what I'd like to say is how wonderful it was on that film when the children took this deep in-breath of surprise when they saw the puppets. If you'd asked, would you use puppets with Year 5 children? I'd have said, no, probably not, they're for younger children. But those children loved it. They absolutely loved it. And the thing that the purpose that the puppets serve in a classroom where you're talking about feelings and trying to engage children to share it's the third point. It's not too personal because the children can relate to those puppets there in the same way that they would with characters in a television drama. They loved them, and it drew out, you know, certain capabilities and discussions that would otherwise be hard to do.
Alan, this was aimed at Year 5 students, or was used with the Year 5 students. How effective will this be when, will boys see these as puppets or will they see them as dolls?
I think that's a problem. I think one of the issues you just brought up about stereotypes, it's a problem with any sort of dramatic improvisation. You tend to step into stereotypes. But I think they were big enough and useful enough to actually dress up. The issue is they are expensive. They've got to be used by the whole school. It can't be one teacher using them, otherwise it's just too much. But I think she was demonstrating there are lots of ways of using them.
Thank you. So far we've looked at 2 resources, but now we come to the part of the show where we have the opportunity to talk about other resources available in the primary PSHE marketplace. Beatrice, coming to you as our PSHE expert, are there any resources out there in the PSHE citizenship marketplace that you think are also worth looking at?
Yes, there is a government site aimed at Key Stage 1 pupils with online activities covering main areas of PSHE and citizenship. This is a very good interactive website, specifically looking at issues of health and safety for pupils in Key Stage 1.
And are there any other alternative resources you could recommend?
Yes, the Sound Learning Bullying Pack. This cassette, workbook and worksheets are suitable for Key Stage 1 and 2 in teaching children about bullying, what can be done to prevent it and how victims can get help. It's a good way to tackle a sensitive subject.
Thanks. So to recap, we've seen 2 resources in use: Your World, My World photo pack by Oxfam and Large Puppets by the Puppet Company. So Beatrice, of the resources that you've seen today, are there any that you'd especially recommend?
I'd recommend the puppets. I think they're a really fun, fabulous resource, but also have the ability to look at painful subjects. I think they're very creative. They get children up and playing with them, and they can create their own little stories around other things that happen to them in school, both good and bad. So I'd recommend the puppets.
Thank you. So our resource review panel recommendation today is Large Puppets by the Puppet Company. And if you want further details on any of the resources you've seen in today's programme, you can get them from our website, teachers.tv/resource review. Or if you'd like to get in touch, you can do so by contacting us at resourcereview@teachers.tv. So all it remains me to do is to thank our panel and thank you for joining us. Goodbye.